There are places that look harmless but function like slow poison, environments that quietly dismantle your future while convincing you that nothing is wrong. Most men spend decades inside them, confused about why their lives never break open, why momentum never arrives, why every year feels like a repetition of the last. They don't realize the danger because it doesn't announce itself with violence. It welcomes them with familiarity. The spaces that feel safest are often the ones draining the life out of them. The greatest threats rarely look like enemies. They look like companions. Long ago, those who studied power understood a brutal truth. A man is rarely destroyed by open opposition. He is undone by comfort. You believe you're just spending time. You believe you're building connections. You believe you're staying social, staying human. That belief is the trap. You step into the same rooms, the same conversations, the same circles every day, unaware that beneath the surface there are pressure plates waiting for your weight. You don't see the mechanism working, only the effect years later when ambition feels distant and drive feels heavy. The fastest way to break a man is not to confront him head-on. It is to place him somewhere his hunger dulls, where his edge rusts without noise. There are environments designed to keep men docile, financially stagnant, emotionally exposed, and mentally small. Most walk into them willingly, even eagerly, wondering why their lives feel like they're sinking in thick ground while others move forward. Think back to the last time you sat among familiar faces and unloaded your frustrations. You probably felt lighter afterward. You mistook that sensation for healing. It wasn't peace. It was the sensation of your strength seeping away. You didn't walk away with a plan. You walked away anesthetized. You exchanged authority for reassurance. And everyone present registered that exchange. There are zones that quietly dismantle power, siphon confidence, and turn resolve into something brittle. If you occupy one of them now, you are not resting. You are being processed. Your attention is being extracted. Your sharpness is being worn down. And those you trust most are closest to the blade. What I am doing now is pulling the curtain back. I'm exposing the spaces that sabotage men while pretending to support them. I'm going to show you why the comforting presence is often the first strike, and why being dominant in a stagnant environment is a slow, invisible collapse. We begin with the most seductive trap of all, the one men return to again and again because it feels humane, the place where many ambitions suffocate long before the body fails. If you care about the men you could become, you cannot look away. The first environment that must be reduced to ash is what can only be described as the sympathy circle. You recognize it instantly. It's the message thread filled with complaints before sunrise. It's the familiar bar where the same grievances are recycled every week. It's the table where problems are dissected endlessly but never solved. This space is addictive because it rewards weakness with attention. Its currency is shared frustration, collective bitterness, and carefully polished excuses. Look at how you spend your evenings. Examine the conversations that dominate your time. Are they about growth, leverage, strategy, execution? Or are they rituals of grievance, endless autopsies of unfair bosses, corrupt systems, bad luck, and impossible odds? You believe you are unburdening yourself. You believe you are being honest. But those who understood human nature knew something most men refuse to accept. Pity is intoxicating. It soothes while it destroys. Each time you complain in that environment, you expose yourself. You reveal exactly where you're fractured, where you're insecure, where pressure makes you fold. You assume the listeners care. In reality, they are consuming your weakness to soothe their own sense of failure. When someone responds with understanding nods and familiar phrases about how hard everything is, they are not lifting you. They are anchoring you. They are granting you permission to remain exactly as you are. They need you there. If you were to rise, if you were to escape and succeed, your presence would become an unbearable mirror reflecting their own refusal to act. In a culture built on shared grievance, success is a threat. No one in that space wants a victor. They want a fellow casualty, someone whose stagnation makes their own inaction feel reasonable. Study the expressions around you in those moments. You won't see predators preparing to hunt. You'll see a cluster seeking warmth, hoping proximity will replace movement while danger waits beyond the edge. Every session of venting rewires your mind. It teaches you to chase validation instead of outcomes, relief instead of respect. A man who seeks sympathy cannot command fear, and without fear there is no true independence. This environment is especially dangerous because it masquerades as virtue. It calls itself openness. It calls itself authenticity. It praises exposure as courage. That narrative exists because exposed men are easier to manage. In the arena of power, revealing your inner fractures is not bravery. It is intelligence handed to anyone watching. In these circles, you distribute that intelligence freely. You announce what stops you, what scares you, what keeps you immobile. You need to understand that every exchange is either an attempt to gain ground or an admission that you have none. When you sit and recount failure without intent to reverse it, you train everyone present to see you as dead weight. They may offer comfort, but internally they file you away as lesser. Your struggle becomes their proof of superiority. This space dulls you. It convinces you that companionship can replace achievement. It cannot. When real demands arise, when effort or risk is required, these people evaporate. They were never allies in ascent. They were partners in stagnation. This circle is where ambition is quietly interred, covered with layers of understanding and nodding agreement. If you remain, your end will be gentle and unnoticed, surrounded by people who mourn loudly while secretly relieved it wasn't them. Your attention, your energy, your unfulfilled potential are being consumed. Survival requires a hard realization. You don't need someone to absorb your pain. You need environments that force you to sharpen, act, and become dangerous again. You don't need consolation. You don't need someone to nod in understanding. What you need is a plan that works, a set of actions that produces results. The fleeting relief you feel when you complain, when you spill your frustrations to those around you, isn't comfort, it's your drive being drained from your system. It is the sound of your ambition being suffocated under a pillow of sympathy, your competitive edge dissolving while you pretend it's harmless. You must sever yourself from these venting rituals. Leave the endless threads that obsess over grievances. Walk away from people who exist only to validate misery. Seek those who act, not those who simply acknowledge. The spaces built to soothe your weaknesses are traps dressed in warmth. Every moment you linger is another heartbeat given to the vultures circling just beyond your awareness. This is the first gate, the one most tempting because it masquerades as home. Yet if you cannot abandon the hands that pat your back while keeping you anchored, you will never gather the courage to confront those who actually demand your full measure. Your social comfort is domesticating you. You are turning into a tamed creature in a world that requires predators. Destroy this cycle. Eliminate the craving for sympathy. Understand this. The silence of your struggle, the self-contained sharpening of your own mind, is the foundation on which your future strength is built. If you linger in this warm pit, you are already buried. The only question is how much more soil you will let pile on before your life suffocates beneath it. The sympathy circle is only the first snare. It erodes spirit, but the next traps steal identity itself. They make you think you're advancing when in truth you are nothing more than a supporting actor in someone else's narrative. Step deeper into the killing fields. The warmth of the herd fades, but now you are entering a more insidious arena. Most men chase proximity to power, mistaking a chair at a high-status table for influence, believing that being observed is the same as being formidable. The second snare, the table of unearned respect, awaits. You finally find yourself among those you once admired from afar, in rooms where bottles of wine outweigh months of labor, and the air vibrates with the illusion of belonging. They smile at your words. They ask opinions that carry no weight. Pride surges, and you feel entitled. But while you fancy yourself a peer, a strategist would see a mascot. This table is lethal because it cultivates obedience to appearances, not mastery of outcomes. You are present, but not relevant. You are being groomed, subtly tamed, your ego fed while your ambition stagnates. They need you there to reflect their own magnanimity, to feel the superiority of watching someone like you trying to blend in. Do not be deceived. When stakes rise, when decisions demand real leverage, your position is null. Here, hunger dies slowly. The table offers illusion without substance, a status borrowed from manners and costume. You start to mimic, dress, speak, and posture like them, but your influence remains flat. You become a parasite of pretense, consuming prestige without generating power. While you are flattered, they are controlling the pace of your growth, ensuring you remain just a step behind. Yet there is a second, even more seductive pit. The echo chamber of low-level winners. This is where the self-declared king rules a stagnant pond, where brilliance feels unquestioned because the surrounding water is shallow. In high school reunions, local offices, or social clusters, you are the smartest, the most capable. The applause reinforces your supremacy. You feel untouchable. But Machiavelli's warning echoes. Princes perish here. When your ego feeds only on those below, evolution halts. The blade dulls, sharpening unnecessary. The room becomes a mirror for your ego, a hall of mirrors reflecting adulation, not growth. You believe you've conquered a domain, but in truth, you've traded challenge for comfort. The inhabitants of this pond do not stimulate improvement. They celebrate your standing because it elevates their own narrative of proximity to success. Step beyond the pond, attempt the ocean of real predators, and the illusion shatters. Suddenly, you see how soft your edge has become. If you are the smartest in the room, you are in the wrong room. The table of unearned respect and the pond of low-level champions are dual instruments of control. One binds you to the powerful, making you a submissive observer. The other binds you to the weak, making you a complacent sovereign in an insignificant domain. Neither offers sovereignty. You are a character in stories not your own. To reclaim authority, you must endure being the least in a room of giants rather than the greatest among children. You must forsake the hollow admiration of the high-status table and the empty praise of the shallow pond. Without this, you will wander your life as a celebrated local anomaly or a recognized spectator, never perceiving that the chains you wear were forged by your own craving for approval. Walls constructed from gold-colored accolades are still walls. And as we advance, the perils stop being about ego and start focusing on survival itself. Now, the predators emerge. These are environments that do more than stall progress. They siphon vitality, bleed potential, and leave you exposed. The next traps are designed not merely to cage ambition but to feed on it, to extract from you the resources and energy you need to rise. They lurk in the shadows of prestige, waiting to convert pride into stagnation. One is the arena where debts of image accumulate, another where neutrality masquerades as wisdom, and another still that drags you back to a past life, binding you to a version of yourself that no longer serves the mission. These zones will test more than ego. They will demand vigilance, ruthlessness, and the willingness to sever attachments that once felt safe. Every choice, every interaction, every conversation must now be tactical. If it isn't serving leverage or honing your edge, it is silently taking from you. You are being consumed quietly, and the predators know your name. This is the battlefield where survival is measured in awareness and decisive action. There is no room for hesitation, no forgiveness for complacency. The spaces you enter must either strengthen the empire you are building or else you are the prey. You have survived the first gates, but the hunt is far from over. The next layers of danger are deeper, more subtle, and more corrosive because they wear the guise of victory. They tempt the ego, not the insecurity. They offer applause, validation, inclusion, and proximity. But in every gesture, in every smile, in every nod, there is an extraction, a subtle surrender of power you may not yet recognize. The table, the pond, the rooms where praise is currency, all these are engineered to immobilize, to lull ambition to sleep. You must see them clearly, measure them ruthlessly, and be willing to walk away while the temptation to stay feels irresistible. Survival demands it. Inaction is surrender. To remain is to hand your empire to others, brick by brick, conversation by conversation, compliment by compliment. You must learn to be absent where the presence of others will bleed you dry. You must be unseen, calculating, and aware of the predators disguised as peers. Only then can you reclaim the field, sharpen the edge, and move beyond the comfortable traps that have held men hostage for lifetimes. You are pouring life into a shadow. Every heartbeat, every ounce of effort, is being siphoned into something that no longer exists. You linger in a room, a business, a partnership, or a relationship that expired years ago, shackled only by the blood you've already spent. This is the sunken cost trap, a psychological whirlpool that drags men down quietly, patiently, until they forget what it feels like to rise. Machiavelli observed that the downfall of most men is not the result of a single catastrophic error, but of their inability to abandon the dead. You tell yourself it is loyalty. You insist it is perseverance. In reality, you are executing a slow-motion suicide. Here, you fight not for what lies ahead, but for the ghosts behind you. You remain with a partner who disrespects your vision, a colleague who drains every resource without return, or a social circle that consumes your attention while offering nothing in exchange. Why do you stay? Because your pride refuses to accept that the last 5 years were wasted. Every additional hour spent in this decaying space compounds the loss. Every attempt to revive a foundation of sand is theft from the men you are meant to become. Understand this. Time already spent is gone. It is currency that has no current value. The only question that matters is whether the next hour produces leverage, progress, or power. If it does not, and you remain, you have ceased to be a strategist. You have become prey, clinging to a burning building because you lamented the cost of the furniture. The sunken cost environment is a vampire, draining your sovereign mask, forcing you into reactive survival, tethering your focus to repair rather than conquest. True power demands ruthlessness with your own history. You must recognize the dead ends, sever ties without hesitation, and walk away without glancing behind. Men who linger are the ones who drown in their own past, fearing the emptiness that follows detachment. They prefer conflict and stagnation to silence and potential. Yet it is only in that void, after the cord is cut, that sovereignty is forged. You must be willing to incinerate the bridge beneath your feet if it leads only to a graveyard. The next trap is even more visible yet just as lethal. The stage of false status. This is the modern snare, where life is performed, image is prioritized over substance, and social standing is purchased at the expense of freedom. This circle demands a car, a watch, a lifestyle that isn't yours by merit but by mimicry. This is no longer a social outlet, it is a debt trap. You trade genuine power for the fleeting glow of respect. Machiavelli warned that a prince who spends to maintain an image will eventually exhaust all resources, becoming predatory toward those around him just to survive. In this environment, the predator is your own debt, and your people are the years of freedom you mortgage to feed it. You walk in wearing a golden chain that binds you to insecurity. You fear being exposed. You fear losing your seat at a table built on illusions. You are right to fear, for the moment you stop performing, the table evaporates. The people there respect only the shadow you project, not the substance behind it. Your sovereign mask is compromised, no longer a tool for control but a costume to hide fragility. You trade liquidity, the very fuel of unshakable influence, for fleeting social validation. Every month you overextend, every display of wealth or status you maintain, every risk you avoid to protect appearances, compounds the trap. This is the slow erosion of sovereignty. Consider the psychological pressure. Honesty would shatter the illusion. One bad month could undo all of it. You are managing a stage, not building an empire. A true man of power would choose a basement with leverage over a mansion with debt. The stage of false status kills resilience because every setback becomes a crisis. Desperation creeps in. Weak moves multiply. You plead for opportunities instead of commanding them. You become the very figure you were warned never to be. Weak, dependent, visible in your vulnerability. The only escape is mastery of the clean break. Look at the decade of your life spent here as a lesson, not a sentence. Sever the ties without remorse. The void you fear, the loneliness, the silence, is the clearing where growth is possible. You cannot reach the sky if you cling to a rotting tree. Your sovereign mask is tested more here than against any enemy. Coldness is easy toward an adversary, it is brutal to wield it against memory. Yet if your past obstructs your empire, it must be obliterated. Most will watch this and immediately identify someone, a person, a group, a chapter, and feel guilt or invent excuses. That is the mark of entrapment. You are hemorrhaging potential, choosing prolonged, agonizing social death over the decisive surgical exit. In power, the gravest sin is the mistake you refuse to correct. Walk away from the dead weight. Not tomorrow. Not after one final plea. Now. Every moment you cling to the past denies space for your future. The burden of history has been addressed. Now comes the weight of image, the veneer of false respect that must be confronted. You have seen the traps that feed off spirit, that drain the present. Now you must confront the arenas that feed off status, the stage where performance masquerades as power. They demand energy, attention, and obedience, offering nothing in return. Every smile, every nod, every curated gesture is an extraction. Survival demands recognition, ruthless calculation, and the willingness to vanish from spaces that bleed you dry. Presence without value is a currency you cannot afford. You must learn to inhabit absence, to sharpen your edge unseen, to observe while the predators miscalculate your absence as weakness. Only then can you rise above the performance, reclaim agency, and prepare for the traps that consume both ego and essence. The stage of false status is a crucible where your resolve is tested, where you either shed the weight of image or continue to hemorrhage power in the gilded cage of appearances. Your ego doesn't just whisper bad ideas. It grabs the steering wheel and accelerates straight toward financial ruin and social invisence. If you believed emotion was your weakness, wait until you see what unchecked pride is doing to your leverage, your positioning, and your future. There are environments where ego is rewarded publicly while quietly bankrupting you, and environments where trying to offend no one ensures you are remembered by no one. These places feel sophisticated. They feel mature. They feel safe. They are neither. One drains your resources while applauding you. The other drains your relevance while thanking you for your cooperation. The first is the arena where image replaces substance. The second is where neutrality masquerades as wisdom. The first trap is the theater of borrowed status. You are acting out a role in front of an audience that wouldn't follow you into battle and wouldn't notice if you vanished tomorrow. This is the environment where appearances demand constant feeding. Where the entry fee is paid monthly in credit, anxiety, and silent panic. You recognize it instantly. The section behind velvet ropes you can't justify. The clothes chosen not for function but for approval. The circles where spending is the proof of belonging and restraint is treated like weakness. This place operates like compound interest on insecurity. It charges you daily for the privilege of pretending. Machiavelli understood that presentation can amplify power, but only when it rests on something solid. When the display comes first and the substance never arrives, you aren't projecting dominance. You are advertising fragility. You become a performer trapped on a stage made of thin boards and painted gold, terrified that a single gust of reality will collapse the set. This environment forces you into constant defense. You cannot pivot. You cannot take strategic losses. You cannot admit constraint or recalibrate. Every decision is filtered through the fear of exposure. The truth is brutal but absolute. The faster you try to look wealthy, the longer you guarantee poverty. In this space, your rank is measured by consumption, not creation. You are useful to others only as long as you keep spending. Your debt reassures them. Your overextension flatters their ego. Every unnecessary upgrade, every round bought to keep pace, every gesture meant to signal belonging is a surrender of future autonomy. You exchange tomorrow's freedom for tonight's approval. Machiavelli warned that men who live beyond their capacity eventually rot into predators or beggars. In this arena, you oscillate between both. Bound by a decorative chain you financed yourself, mistaking shine for strength. And then there is the next trap, quieter, cleaner, far more deceptive. The neutral zone. The space between sides. The arena of the middle ground. This is where you attempt to offend no one and end up trusted by no one. The meeting where you soften every statement. The conflict where you refuse alignment. The circle where you nod at everyone and stand for nothing. You tell yourself it's strategic. That you're being mature. That staying flexible keeps doors open. That illusion is lethal. In the realm of power, the center is not safety. It is where every projectile lands. Machiavelli was merciless on this point. Neutrality is not balance. It is weakness disguised as restraint. When you avoid choosing, you forfeit respect from the victor and loyalty from the defeated. You become unreliable by design. Think about how often you've swallowed conviction to maintain peace. How many times you've tried to mediate conflicts that were never yours to resolve. You weren't stabilizing the situation. You were marking yourself as expendable. Standing nowhere signals that you are anchored to nothing. You become a shadow among men with direction. The middle ground feels calm because nothing explodes, but you are eroding slowly, unnoticed. Promotions bypass you. Decisions happen without you. Real conversations occur elsewhere. Not because you lack competence, but because no one can read your spine. Uncertainty repels power. If others cannot predict where you stand under pressure, they cannot rely on you when stakes rise. And if you are not relied upon, you are not feared. You have constructed an identity defined by absence. You are agreeable, flexible, reasonable, and irrelevant. Extremes use you as padding. A buffer. A convenience. And when tension resolves, both sides discard you without consequence. Sovereignty demands polarity. You must be willing to draw lines. To accept resistance. To plant yourself visibly and let opposition form around you. It is infinitely more powerful to be rejected by many and respected by some than to be passively liked and silently ignored. We have dismantled the illusion of status built on debt. We have exposed the false safety of standing nowhere. These environments don't destroy you with force. They drain you through permission. One feeds on your money. The other feeds on your character. And both leave you hollow, compliant, and easy to replace. You are nearing the final threshold, the one that doesn't just test your strategy or your discipline, but your identity itself. This is the gate that knows you intimately. It remembers your name before it carried weight, your face before it hardened, your doubts before you learned how to hide them. This is the place that tries to assassinate the king before the crown ever touches his head. To finish this correctly, we have to return to the origin and make sure there is no path backward. This last trap is not a coordinate on a map. It is a memory that still has access to you. It is the shadow of where you came from. You have moved through the social killing fields. You survived the seduction of ego and the comfort of false status. Now you face the most personal danger of all. The ghost of your hometown. This is the circle of people who knew you before you chose growth. The classmates, the relatives, the early companions who still carry a frozen image of you in their mind. They don't see who you are becoming. They see who you were when you were manageable. Machiavelli understood that transformation is never celebrated by those who benefit from your former weakness. Those who watched you struggle will always feel entitled to your smallness. Your evolution doesn't inspire them. It indicts them. Every step you take forward highlights the distance they refuse to travel. When you return to this environment, whether in person or through constant digital contact, you step back into an invisible enclosure. The language shifts. Old jokes resurface. Childhood labels are reapplied. Past mistakes are resurrected whenever you display ambition or authority. This is not humility. It is containment. You cannot command a room that remembers you kneeling. You cannot wear authority among people who feel ownership over your former self. To rise fully, you must accept a brutal truth. Not everyone is meant to come with you. Becoming sovereign requires that you outgrow familiarity. The cost of the next version of your life is the burial of the previous one. If you refuse to sever this psychological tether, it will sabotage every structure you try to build. The past will keep reaching forward, eroding your resolve, softening your edge, whispering that you're pretending. The reason you lingered in all these dangerous places was never ignorance. It was fear of the cold. You chose warmth over clarity. You chose company over command. You mistook comfort for safety and familiarity for loyalty. You didn't believe you could survive standing alone. That illusion has collapsed now. You see the wires stretched across the floor. You recognize the tranquilizers disguised as conversation. You understand that the rooms you felt safest in were systematically dismantling your potential. Insight alone is no longer sufficient. From this moment on, every interaction is a calculation. Every environment must justify its existence in your life. If a room does not sharpen you or extend your leverage, it is feeding on you. There is no neutral ground. There is no casual presence. There is only pursuit or extraction. You have been shown the machinery of your own stagnation. Returning to the old patterns now is not accidental. It is voluntary surrender. If this realization feels uncomfortable, invasive, or unsettling, it means it has landed correctly. Mark this moment. Signal alignment with this mindset. Engage with this message not as entertainment but as a declaration that you recognize the traps operating in your life. Commit to staying sharp. This is not about loyalty to a channel. It is about loyalty to your trajectory. We are forming a circle of men who refuse to be domesticated by environments designed to keep them small. For those who understand that surface-level awareness is insufficient, there is a deeper layer available. A controlled space for those who want precision, leverage, and frameworks that cannot exist in public view. Inside, we do not just expose traps. We construct replacements. We move from observation to ownership. The difference between spectating and controlling is not talent. It is positioning. The entrance is open to those with discipline. Capacity is limited by design. You can remain where comfort is plentiful and outcomes are scarce, or you can step into the room where decisions are irreversible and power is real. If you are still here, it means you didn't flinch when the mirror was held up. That attention and restraint are assets. Guard them. The terrain is hostile. The mechanisms are active. But now you see them. Move forward without asking for permission. Don't explain your exit. Let silence deliver the message they were never meant to hear. Take what you've learned and turn it into action. Take back what was always yours. The face you wear is no longer for comfort, it's for control. Keep your distance. Hold the line. Stay cold.